Greetings, everybody. I'm here with Jon Schnepp, and we are going to talk about comics and the comic book industry and movies. Thank you for being on the Father Sebastiaan blog. This is my first entry outside of vampires, but I wanted to share a very important mission for me, and this is to get comic books to be relevant again in the comic industry.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on, Sebastian. The documentary I'm trying to make is like the idea is to unite all of us nerds. I like to call sweaty nerds because when you get really excited, you start sweating, and I just changed it short-term sweaties. That's why it's called Sweaties Unite. Okay. Some people don't even like being called sweaty. Why are you calling me a sweaty? It's a term of endearment, but I was like, fuck it, this is my blog or my video, so I'm like, this is my documentary, so I'll call it what I want,
Okay.
But I think it's as people watch the Kickstarter video, they see, it's actually about trying to get the modern audience that goes to see comic book movies to get back into the comic book stores, because a lot of people who are into the television shows and movies, they might not even have ever read an Iron Man comic. They just like Iron Man as a character in the movies. So I think especially with our youth, to get them into like all the history and the past of all these amazing stories that have happened in comic books, and see, hey, it's a world of imagination. So I want to be able to try to get people back into that. I think digital comics is a start, but I know that a lot of comic book stores survive off of selling variant covers and chase covers because they're not selling enough comic books.
Explain to my audience what a variant cover and a chase cover is.
Well, there might be an issue of Star Wars that came out about 6 or 7 weeks ago, and they have like 100 different covers. It's the same exact comic, but it might have like a Boba Fett cover, then a pencil Boba Fett cover, then Luke Skywalker, then 10 different Darth Vaders. So it's like, so they collect all these covers, but ultimately no one's actually reading the comics. They just slab them in something called CGC, which is a grading system. So a lot of these things have happened because people were buying comics in the 90s as like kind of like it's like the stock market. It's going to become worth money. Then the bottom fell out, so comics really like hit the rocks like in the late 90s. Okay. And over the last 10 years, as comic book movies and television shows started booming, comic book stores have been feeling, getting a lot more people to come in and like be interested in it. But I just think with bookstores also closing, I think that comic book stores have to like try to reach out and become more community based. We've seen it happening with certain places like Meltdown. They have like a lot of activities that are happening.
And Meltdown's a comic shop in LA?
Yeah, Meltdown's a comic shop here in LA. Okay. I've been reading a lot about other places, combining coffee houses, like you might have seen it in the movie Kick-Ass, where they go to this comic book store and then they sit down inside the comic book store.
It's like a manga cafe.
Yeah, it has to happen because you have to create that sense of community. And I think by trying to tie in all of these different comic shops, not just across America, but across the globe, and create a global awareness about this, I think it'll build that community.
Do you know one thing, after living in France for 8 years, there's a huge comic culture in France. It's like they have their own homegrown, like Tintin and like stuff like that. But there's also the French are in love with the Japanese. There's an entire district of comic shops right under the Pantheon in the 6th arrondissement. You go in there and it's like comic book heaven. I think there's like 20 comic shops, and in the middle is a manga cafe where you can go in and they have all these mangas on the wall. So I think one thing that we need to do is because of Twitter culture, Americans in particular have been ignoring books and ignoring the physical printed and to hold it and smell the paper and get back into that. It's easier to turn on Netflix and watch Daredevil or Jessica Jones.
And you know what? There's nothing wrong with Jessica Jones or Daredevil and watching. I think they're both really great series, especially season 2. Check it out. But, of Daredevil.
Yeah, I got 2 episodes.
Hey, man, it gets people like, where did this come from? And you can actually discover all of the comic books that influenced all the different things that are in Daredevil. There's like the Punisher scene on the roof is from one series. There's Elektra, which is from a whole other series. So there's all these great comic book stories that have been told, and it's a great way to like kind of like, if I like Daredevil season 2, here's all this amazing reading material.
Great. One of the things you guys got to do is pick up a comics. Like if you're in France, because a lot of my audience is in France, guys, go out to the comic shops, support the comic shops, because here in America, we're losing it. I mean, bookstores have been closing like crazy. It's been absolutely, it just sucks. It just sucks. And, we're Gen X, right? You're Gen X? Gen X knows how to read. The millennials, man, they're living by Twitter. the millennials have been living by Twitter, and that's cool. But one of the things that they've been doing is just watching the movies, and they don't really pick up the background. Like everybody thinks this Batman versus Superman story, Batman versus Superman is original,
right?
And you know, we had a big fanfare. I won't spoil it for you Gen Y guys, but definitely when I watched it, I was like, I've already read the comic.
Right. There's a lot of 80s and 90s comics that Batman v Superman were able to borrow from generously, and also add some of their own stuff. So honestly, I think that's why I'm doing this documentary. If you want to check it out, it's on Kickstarter. It's called Sweaties Unite: Rise of the Uber Nerd. And it's a feature film documentary, and I'm looking for donations right now. I'm trying to get to the goal. When this comes up, there'll probably be about a week or two left. So definitely check it out and become a backer if you're interested in helping to get this comic community thriving again.
You've already done a documentary with a successful Kickstarter.
I did a documentary. I raised money on Kickstarter 3 years ago. It's called The Death of Superman Lives: What Happened? And it was basically about the Tim Burton, Nicolas Cage, Kevin Smith Superman movie that was going to be made in 96, 97, 98. The plug got pulled in 98. It was supposed to come out in 99. And over the years in 2000, when I just saw some of the artwork that was being kind of like released very secretly about it, and I always thought, man, there's this idea that they had, especially with Tim Burton and some of the artwork that I saw, it always interested me. And then years later, I met a few people who were involved in it, and some friends were like, hey, you seem really interested in this. Why don't you make a documentary? I'd never made a documentary before, but I was like, no one else is going to do this, and if I could raise the money on Kickstarter, I'll do it. And so I did it on Kickstarter, raised the money. It was a lot harder than I thought. It took a lot longer, so I went back and raised a little bit more money to finish it, and I premiered it last year at Comic-Con. It's the highest rated Superman movie on Rotten Tomatoes that's ever came out. It's a movie that
Death
never
of
got
Superman
made.
Lives.
What happened? Yeah, that's what it's called. So
I'm gonna check that out right after this.
So that kind of got the little bug going with me in making documentaries. I'm known more for like directing cartoons. I've directed Metalocalypse, all 4 seasons of that on Adult Swim. I directed The Venture Brothers, Black Panther, a lot of different cartoon shows. Also, I've dabbled in live action television, doing Upright Citizens Brigade. I directed a segment of ABCs of Death.
Wow.
So I've had my hands in a lot of different things, and doing this documentary, The Death of Superman Lives: What Happened, was like really fun. Me and Holly Payne, my producer, we worked really hard on it. So we've really been like all last year touring on it. So launching this brand new documentary for me is like something like, I've got a lot of other projects in the pipeline. None of them I could talk about right now, but with the Kickstarter, that's something that I'm trying to raise money for so that I can actually make it and release it next year.
One of the back to the kind of really interesting concept is that I've watched all this superhero stuff, and I didn't really get into it until the last minute. But I grew up with comics, man. I watched. I remember I was reading Marvel. What got me into comics was Marvel's when Marvel did the old Star Wars comics, and then Dark Horse took it over, and I'm in love with Dark Horse. Dark Horse is a great company.
Sure, they did an amazing amount of Star Wars comics. They've done incredible adaptations of Aliens, Predator,
Alien
RoboCop.
Earth War was awesome.
Yeah, they've done a lot of cool stuff.
So comics are a really important part of American culture. Everywhere I go, they say Americans don't have culture, but I'm saying cowboy hats, blue jeans, and comic books. That's what I support. So come and support this Kickstarter. The link will be in the article. It's really important that we get education on this and try to make a revolution to bring comics back, and try to find a new place for comics and culture. And I think this documentary sounds like it could be a very big influence on that.
Well, it's already starting, so I'm going to go to the places where it's already started, and then also try to link a lot of the bigger comic book stores that are here in America as well as globally, and get them all on the same page, and make it a very easy way to get a community going. So I think it's a really worthwhile thing to get people back into the comic book stores and reading comics. So
great, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Sebastian.
And guys, check it out. Do you have a website?
Yeah, it's just a Kickstarter right now. It's just a Kickstarter.
Okay.
Just type in Sweaties Unite, and it'll pop up, and become a backer and help me make this thing.
Yep, and I'm going to be becoming a backer right after this video is done. Rock and roll, guys. Check us out. Do subscribe, support, all that stuff. Have a great night and a great day. And as always, thank you for watching.